Alrighty guys, what's going on? It's Phil here, and today I want to talk to you guys about AEW Worlds End 2024. Not only just the final pay-per-view of AEW for the year 2024, but the final pay-per-view of the year for professional wrestling as a whole when it comes down to 2024. AEW Worlds End 2024 was a very polarizing event. A lot of people liked it, a lot of people did not like it. And today I want to talk to you guys about what I thought of the show as a whole. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. But before we do, make sure you guys hit that like button, turn on the bell for all notifications as you subscribe to the channel. That way you guys never miss another upload right here on the YouTube channel. Let's get right into talking about AEW World's End 2024. Let's start talking about the AEW Continental Classic semifinal matches as they took place back to back from each other when this event started. And the first one that we're going to be talking about is Will Ospreay taking on Kyle Fletcher. Now, a lot of people in this tournament wanted to see Kyle Fletcher go all the way, myself included, honestly. And when it came down to this matchup between Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay, obviously we all knew that this was going to be a banger of a matchup. Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher met at AEW Full Gear, and it was none other than just a great matchup between those two combatants. But at the end of the day, we did see Will Ospreay pick up the victory to head to the finals of the AEW Continental Classic. Now, I personally believe that it was going to be Will Ospreay all along to get to the finals of the AEW Continental Classic this year. I just personally would have loved to see AEW really capitalize on what they have done with Kyle Fletcher from this entire tournament. You have Kyle Fletcher move on in such a strong way throughout this entire tournament of the AEW Continental Classic, and I feel like AEW at its times has had lightning in a bottle with a superstar, and ultimately they just did not capitalize on them in the right moments. I felt like Kyle Fletcher was that kind of lightning in the bottle type superstar to where you really can elevate him through this entire tournament, have him go into the finals, and even if he did not win the finals, you could say that Kyle Fletcher was honestly one of the, if not the best in this entire tournament. You saw him continuously get wins, and you see him elevate his status throughout this entire tournament. But Will Ospreay was able, like I said, to pick up the victory and move on into the finals. I think Kyle Fletcher is going to be having a great year for 2025. I think this tournament definitely did elevate him. I just personally would have liked to see him be more elevated by going to the finals. But regardless, I love Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay is absolutely one of my favorite superstars, not just in 2024, but in professional wrestling as a whole. And I really do feel like what they did with Will Ospreay earlier on and later on in the night was awesome. And we will talk about the finals later on in the show. But personally, I love this matchup. One of my favorite matches of the entire night. Will Ospreay getting the W over Kyle Fletcher. Let's talk about the second Continental Classic semifinal matchup between Kazuchika Okada, the champion heading on into this tournament, and Ricochet. This matchup was absolutely fantastic in every single way, shape, and form. I didn't expect anything less when it came down to these two in Ricochet and Kazuchika Okada, but what really made this match stand out and what made it really feel special was the crowd in Orlando. The crowd was just insane throughout this entire matchup, not just because of the reactions that they had, but the chants that they had as well. They were chanting, bald chants at Ricochet. They were just, having fun with this matchup. And at the end of the day, that's really all you can ask for when it comes down to a crowd for professional wrestling. And, Kazuchika Okada was able to pick up the victory within this matchup here, going to the finals of the Continental Classic. And Ricochet, we're going to be talking about it, but let's just say Ricochet had probably one of, if not the most embarrassing moments of his entire, not just AEW career, but his career as a whole. Like I said, we're going to be talking about it in just a little bit, so stay tuned. But yeah, this was not this was not a good look for Ricochet. But we will see in due time what this does for him. But let's talk about that right here, right now. Let's talk about what happened with Ricochet. Because Ricochet did lose this matchup to Kazuchika Okada in the semifinals of the C2. And, Ricochet probably had one of the most embarrassing moments of his entire AEW or even professional wrestling career. But I think it did serve a purpose for what is going to be coming in 2025. What happened was Swerve Strickland came out a couple of days ago and said to Swerve Strickland that, look, you're in the semifinals of the Continental Classic. You best not miss this opportunity and actually head into the finals, because if you don't head into the finals like you say that you are, I'm going to make your life a living hell. And what happened was Swerve Strickland came out after the loss for Ricochet, and he had a wheelbarrow full of toilet paper. And the toilet paper is a reference from what happened at the Hammerstein Ballroom when everybody was checking toilet paper at Ricochet. And Swerve and Prince Nana, was coming down the aisle and handing everybody in the front row toilet paper to chuck at Ricochet, but also to wish him a very happy new year. And Swerve Strickland, he said, on the count of three, we're going to do what we do, but also wish Ricochet a happy new year. He does the countdown, they say happy new year, and they continue to chuck toilet paper at Ricochet. And Ricochet didn't say a single word throughout any of this. He didn't say a single word, but his facial expressions really did set the tone for what is ultimately going to be happening with him in 2025. A heel turn is basically already here. I mean, people do not like Ricochet in AEW, and that heel turn is coming one way or another. And I think Ricochet is going to be that chicken shit type heel that AEW could really utilize, and it's going to be a great thing to see Swerve Strickland take on Ricochet in what is going to be an incredible matchup. You have Ricochet, who can be that chicken shit type heel, and you have Swerve Strickland, who is universally loved by the AEW audience. What could go wrong? What could honestly go wrong? And you're going to get a great match out of it as well. So I think this is going to be great heading into 2025. And I think really everybody here in the Continental Classic has something to work off heading into 2025. The thing is, when it comes down to the C2 participants in Will Ospreay, Kyle Fletcher, Okada, and Ricochet, everybody and their mother has something to work on heading into 2025. We all know Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher are not done by any means whatsoever. Okada has Omega to worry about heading in the next coming months. And then, obviously, in 2025, we will be getting the feud between Ricochet and Swerve Strickland. So, obviously, everybody here has a purpose. Everybody here has something to work off of heading into 2025. And I think that's a great thing, because if, somebody was left out in the dust when it comes down to the four competitors in the C2 for the semifinals, I think it probably would have been a really big missed opportunity by AEW, and I'm glad they didn't do that. Up next, let's talk about the Tijuana street fight for the AEW Women's World Championship between the champion in Mariah May and the challenger in Thunder Rosa. Now, really, to me, I thought this match was fine for what it was, right? But the end of the day for me was that there really was no compelling story for me to really get behind this matchup. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Thunder Rosa, and I'm not taking anything away from Mariah May. I just think that Mariah May's championship run as of right now has kind of hit a bit of a wall, essentially. And, I loved when Mariah May was able to pick up the victory and become the AEW Women's World Champion. I just hoped that AEW was going to have a plan for her when she had the championship. And ultimately, that just really hasn't happened yet. And, while we saw a great matchup in the Tijuana street fight, brutal spots, table spots and everything like that, we saw Thunder Rosa's father and his cane get involved essentially and everything like that. Like, I understand that's what really was kind of the driving point for this matchup here, but there really isn't a story here. And I feel like AEW has kind of lacked that kind of feel when it comes down to the women's division and the championships within this women's division for quite some time now. I mean, let's be completely honest. Mariah May is easily one of the best women's wrestlers that they got, and so is Thunder Rosa. But you put them in a stipulation type matchup like this Tijuana street fight to hide the fact that you really didn't have a good and compelling story to tell between them. And I feel like that is honestly a really big miss for AEW. I feel like AEW's women's division has something to really work on in 2025, and that is to really make compelling stories for your women's division. That way, us, the fans, can really get invested for what you guys are going to be doing in that ring. The match can be great. The match can be a 5-star banger, but if I don't have a story to really latch myself onto, I'm not really going to be getting invested. I love the character works that everybody is doing in this matchup here, and I understand where everybody is coming from when it comes down to this quote unquote story that they told here. But to me, it really wasn't anything compelling, and it was just a great match to have that great match for the Women's World Championship. To me, at the end of the day, we're just going to be having to get Thunder Rosa in some other sort of situation here, and Mariah May is obviously going to be having that Women's World Championship so that somebody in Toni Storm can really be that, adversary that is something to look into. So we all know that Toni Storm, Mariah May is in the near future, but we got to see where things go from there on out. So overall, fun match. Mariah May retained, which is easily the choice to make, and we'll see where things go from there for the women's division and heading into 2025. Now let's talk to you guys about a match that was probably my least favorite matchup of the entire night, and I really don't think it's any of the competitors' fault. MJF took on Adam Cole for the Dynamite Diamond Ring, and MJF coming on in was the Dynamite Diamond Ring holder within this match, and man, this feud has so much to go over. At the end of the day, when I saw that this feud came back onto AEW programming, and I don't mean to make this about a WWE situation, so I'm not, but I am going to compare it to a feud that was kind of happening and is still currently happening in WWE, and that is the feud going on between Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan. The feud between Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley is a feud that's been going on for God knows how long, and people just want to see it end. And I feel like that's kind of the same situation here between MJF and Adam Cole. I personally loved the way that they started things out when it came down to everything that's happening between MJF and Adam Cole. They came together as a random pairing within the tag team tournament that they were starting. Became better than you, baby. Then all of a sudden, at World's End last year, we saw the Devil storyline, and Adam Cole emerge as the Devil, which turned MJF's world upside down, losing the AEW World Championship and everything like that. We saw what happened, but then we know what took place to really get things kind of in gear to really just kind of turn everything around for this feud. Ankles were shattered for Adam Cole. Movie roles were had for MJF, and at the end of the day, the feud that was honestly just kind of lightning in a bottle just fizzled out. And, with everything that happened here, AEW tried to hide the fact of them just switching roles, MJF being the heel and Adam Cole being the babyface, as Adam Cole coming out there and saying that he turned on MJF before MJF could turn on him, because we all know MJF could be that type of guy. And yes, for some people, that worked. For some people, that was a fine explanation for everything that kind of happened. But for me, it wasn't. It wasn't. And honestly, it was just kind of insulting my intelligence. And I will say that for this kind of feud, because, you can't just expect people to forget what honestly happened from previous years within your company and just expect them to be okay with everything now that, you kind of just wanted it to be in this way, rather than the way that you made it in the first place. And I'm not saying, that this feud between MJF and Adam Cole was a complete, dud, because we saw some great stuff between them, but it really could have been a lot better. And I really do feel like when you made this feud about a Dynamite Diamond Ring, which really has not been a thing at all within this feud, you're just trying to make something more important than what it actually is, and I feel like that was just kind of the big letdown for this matchup here. The matchup was fine for what it was, right? But, we all knew that MJF was ultimately going to retain the Dynamite Diamond Ring, because that Dynamite Diamond Ring has been on the finger of MJF since its establishment in AEW, and Adam Cole really had no chance. Adam Cole was the one to ultimately stand tall at the end of all of this, even though MJF did pick up the victory to retain the Dynamite Diamond Ring, because, he, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, and the Kingdom, and Matt Taven, and Mike Bennett all stood over a fallen MJF when they ultimately just beat him down in the end. So, look, I mean, I just want to see both Adam Cole and MJF do better things in 2025. I hope that happens. And at the end of the day, we'll just see what happens between the both of them heading into 2025. I just hope that this feud is done and over with. That way we can all move on. Then we had the International Championship be on the line as Konosuke Takeshita took on Powerhouse Hobbs. And what was an amazing matchup between the two. I don't want to take anything away from Takeshita and from Hobbs. I think, when it comes down to both of these guys, I'm a huge fan of both of them. I honestly would love to see more between these guys because I think this matchup was honestly very well done for the International Championship. The problem was to me, and again, this is kind of just a running situation here when it comes down to AEW and their championships right now. There was no story heading into this. There was none whatsoever. I haven't seen Takeshita ever since he took on Josh Alexander back at Maple Leaf Pro at their Forge for Excellence event, which was honestly, I believe, one of their first, if not their first event for Maple Leaf Pro. And, Powerhouse Hobbs, yes, he did just come back. But ultimately, to me, I haven't seen him since that massive, or not even really massive, just a random 8-man tag team match that I had, I believe, on an episode of Dynamite. So I have not really seen the progression of this feud happen on my side of watching AEW programming. And if I'm missing something, please let me know down below in the comments. But I personally haven't seen anything happening between these two guys. So I really could not get invested in what they were trying to tell in terms of a story for this matchup here. But the matchup was fantastic, and I want to see more between Hobbs and Takeshita. I'm a Hobbs and Takeshita guy. I wanted to see Takeshita win championship gold in AEW, and I'm glad that he has that in the International Championship. I ultimately want to see Powerhouse Hobbs win some gold in AEW as well. Personally, in 2025, I hope that he can be able to be joining the Hurt Syndicate. I think he would, be the somewhat Batista of the group for, the Hurt Syndicate and really just learn from guys like MVP, Bobby Lashley, and Shelton Benjamin. But at this rate right now, I do not see that being in the cards for Powerhouse Hobbs. But what I ultimately do hope is the case for this International Championship heading into 2025 is that we get more stories for this championship and more stories involving Konosuke Takeshita, because Takeshita is easily one of the best professional wrestlers that they have in that entire company, and Takeshita really should be utilized on AEW programming. And if Takeshita was defending this championship around the world in other promotions, that is fine. Now, ultimately, what could be the sole purpose of this International Championship, I just don't want to see him get lost on AEW programming. That way, we don't see him on AEW programming, because he should be a guy that should be featured on AEW programming, whether that be Collision or Dynamite weekly, and I really hope that is the case for him in 2025. I want to see stories for these championships in 2025. That's all I'm asking. Now, in all that explanation, I don't believe I said who was ultimately the winner of this entire matchup, and that was Takeshita. Takeshita retained the AEW International Championship. Sorry about that. I completely forgot to even say that, but regardless, Takeshita did win and retain the International Championship. Let's see what happens with him heading into 2025. Now let's talk about the TBS Championship matchup between the champion Mercedes Moné and the challenger in Kris Statlander. Now, the first time that these two ladies faced off against each other was at Full Gear for said TBS Championship, and it turned out to be the longest match in AEW women's history at around 19 minutes. This match takes place at AEW Worlds End, and once again, they have the longest match in AEW women's history at around 24-25 minutes. These ladies killed it in this matchup here. Now, personally, in my eyes, and I may be in the minority here, I personally would take their first matchup over their second matchup, but that's not to say anything bad about Kris Statlander or Mercedes Moné within this matchup. I just think that the first one really kind of just set the tone for what this feud could ultimately be for Kris Statlander and Mercedes Moné, and we'll see where things go. But this matchup here between Mercedes and Kris was absolutely phenomenal. The thing is, when it comes down to Kris Statlander and Mercedes Moné finally found that person that she can really hold on to in AEW. And what I mean is, they literally have a forever type feud between Kris Statlander and Mercedes Moné if they really do want to go down that path. I said on Twitter, and I was met with some criticism about it. That honestly, I feel like Kris Statlander could be Mercedes Moné's Bailey component within AEW. I feel like the two matches that these two have some of the best chemistry, if not the best chemistry in all of AEW. Kris Statlander is the best opponent that Mercedes Moné has faced ever since Mercedes stepped foot in AEW. I truly believe that if AEW wanted to, allow these two ladies to really just tell a great, compelling, long-term story for this TBS championship, I really do believe that they have gold on their hands when it comes down to this feud between Kris Statlander and Mercedes Moné. Mercedes Moné needs a great dance partner. She is a phenomenal in-ring competitor. Don't get me wrong. But when it comes down to having that great dance partner, because, a matchup between two competitors, you need to take and you need to give. And what Kris Statlander and Mercedes Moné have done since being paired up with each other in this rivalry, they have done some amazing things, and they have taken things to another level for this TBS championship. I really want to see more between these two ladies heading into 2025. I really do think AEW has something here between these two ladies, and I really do want to see more explored between Kris Statlander and Mercedes Moné. Mercedes Moné retained the TBS championship, which is ultimately going to be the case. She is not losing that championship anytime soon, and I have no idea who is going to be the one to do it. But if it ended up being Kris Statlander in a third and final matchup in a trilogy per se, I would personally love that, because it gets Kris Statlander up there in the upper echelon of talent, though she is absolutely phenomenal in her own right already. And Mercedes Moné would be allowing somebody like Kris Statlander to just honestly meet her up at her level and ultimately rise above that and become the TBS champion once again. I think these two ladies have something here, and I really do want to see it explored more in 2025. Mercedes Moné picked up the victory, but I don't think it's going to be over in any way, shape, or form. Let's talk about the finals of the Continental Classic, which ended up being Kazuchika Okada, the champion, heading on into this entire tournament, and Will Ospreay. And this matchup, I mean, what can I say about this matchup here? This matchup was my personal favorite matchup of the entire night. Will Ospreay earlier on in the night after his victory, he had an interview with Renee Paquette as he was, being stitched up because he was bloody, and he was just he was just battered after the matchup that he had with Kyle Fletcher earlier on in the night. And what he really did try to emphasize is that he went through like 4 different car crashes within the matchup earlier on in the night, but at the end of the day, he's going to need the crowd from Orlando to be with him in this matchup against Kazuchika Okada and just really elevate him to pick up a victory within this Continental Classic. Now, what ultimately happened was not the case, as he lost to Kazuchika Okada, but regardless, this was an amazing matchup here, and I absolutely loved everything about this matchup here. But what I ultimately loved earlier on within this matchup, before everything kind of got started, before the bell even rung, was the selling of Will Ospreay. When Will Ospreay was making his entrance, he was dizzy. He even went down to a knee, and he ultimately was selling the effects of what happened prior on with the earlier Kyle Fletcher match. He lost a lot of blood in this matchup, so he really just had to emphasize that, and he did. He did. The fantastic promo that he had before the matchup take place. He, sold everything that happened with the prior matchup in this entrance, and he had a banger of a matchup with Kazuchika Okada in the process. And though he did not pick up a victory in the Continental Classic final for the Continental Classic Championship, Will Ospreay did very well within this entire tournament, and I felt like this was going to be the finals from the very start of the tournament, when I saw the bracket from the very beginning. I ultimately hoped for an Okada Ospreay final, and that's ultimately what we got here. I would have loved to see because I would have loved to see Kyle Fletcher pick up the victory and really, win the Continental Classic as a whole, to really emphasize what he could honestly be for AEW. But like I said earlier on in this video, Kyle Fletcher, he is a young guy. He is a young up and coming superstar, and I feel like 2025 is going to be honestly the year for Kyle Fletcher if AEW wants it to be. But Kazuchika Okada picking up the victory was easily a fantastic way to continue what was going to be happening after everything was all said and done. Because when, it was time to present the Continental Championship to Kazuchika Okada, the current EVP right now, and Christopher Daniels came out and he was ultimately going to do that, but he said to him and the rest of the AEW crowd that he was going to be stepping down as an EVP because an EVP is coming back and he is ultimately going to be stepping up to take his place, and that EVP now is the man, the best bout machine, the Rainmaker. I can't believe he's back, and I absolutely love it. It's Kenny Omega, people. Kenny Omega is back into the fold within AEW, and I absolutely love that. Kenny Omega grabbed the Continental Championship, walked down to the ring, presented it to Kazuchika Okada, who is obviously his longtime rival. We all know their stuff in New Japan, and he gave it to Kazuchika Okada, and Kazuchika Okada had to have been the, heel that he is, and holding that championship up high in front of the face of Kenny Omega, and in the background you saw the AEW All In Texas banner, and I feel like that is ultimately what's going to be happening at AEW All In Texas. It's going to be Kazuchika Okada, it's going to be Kenny Omega for the, I believe, sixth time in their illustrious careers against each other, which is absolutely insane. It's either 6 or 7. You guys can correct me in the comments. I believe it's 6, but regardless, we're going to be seeing that matchup in AEW, and I cannot wait for it. Man, they kind of use this Continental Classic in a way to really just set up this matchup for AEW All In Texas, and I don't mind that, but, you really could have utilized this tournament to build an up-and-coming future star for your company in Kyle Fletcher, and I know a lot of people are really not happy about that, and I'm honestly, kind of in agreement with you. I'm in agreement with you, but ultimately, getting this matchup between Okada and Omega was, at the forefront of everybody's mind in AEW, and I feel like that's just kind of what they utilized this tournament for, and we'll see what happens at All In Texas, but man, this was great, and I'm just super, super happy that Kenny Omega is back into the fold within AEW. Now I want to talk about the main event of the show, which was the Fatal 4-Way for the AEW World Championship between Jon Moxley, Switchblade Jay White, Hangman Adam Page, and Orange Cassidy. And this matchup was fine for what it was. Let's just, call a spade a spade. This wasn't really anything too special, but the matchup was solid for the 4 competitors within this matchup here. Obviously, Jon Moxley was going to retain, but the end all be all was that, in my eyes, you really had to make something worthwhile within the ending of this pay per view because, if you just had Jon Moxley retain the championship and that the show just faced to black, I feel like that would just be a huge, complete miss for AEW heading into 2025, and ultimately that did not happen, and I don't understand why people are so upset at the ending as much as they are. Now let's just go over everything. Jay White, I just have to say this ending spot before, we get into what happened at the end of here. So, Jay White Jay White hits the Blade Runner on Marina Shafir, and I pop for that. I think that was absolutely fantastic. I just love Jay White. Jay White has honestly become one of my favorites of, AEW for not just 2024, but for the entirety of their company. I just think Jay White's absolutely fantastic. Jay White was also the one that took the pinfall in this matchup here. But you know what? I don't think that really matters. I think Jay White's going to have an amazing 2025, but that's neither here or there. What happened after the match was, we saw a return happen. And the return was for the Rated R superstar in Adam Copeland. Adam Copeland showed back up on AEW programming. He's honestly been fine for a while, he said in the AEW press conference for World's End. But obviously, with the hurricane that happened in Nashville and everything that happened for North Carolina, Tony Khan allowed Cope to stay home, be with his family, and just, allow, them to get back on their feet, which is perfectly fine. You know what? That's just Tony Khan for you. But, with everything that's happening right now, Adam Copeland's back into the fold with AEW. And I absolutely love that. I think Adam Copeland being back is just an amazing thing for AEW. It's an amazing thing. But, he also brought FTR with him. And now they're a trio going after the Death Riders. And this coming Wednesday on AEW Dynamite, which is honestly tomorrow by the time you're seeing this and of the recording of the video, we're going to be getting a 6-man tag team match between Rated FTR, which is obviously Adam Copeland, Rated, and FTR as FTR, taking on Jon Moxley. I believe it's Pac and Claudio in the trio for the Death Riders. So we're going to be seeing the Death Riders take on Rated FTR on the first simulcast episode of AEW Dynamite that takes place on TBS and Max. So, that's perfectly fine. I feel like at the end of the day, we're just building up to a matchup between Jon Moxley and Adam Copeland, and I feel like that's going to be fine because, we're getting this matchup out of the way now so that we can get to bigger and better matchups for Jon Moxley and the AEW World Championship heading into 2025 and the later versions of, the months and heading on, through the year for 2025. So I'm ultimately fine with Adam Copeland taking on Jon Moxley. But a lot of people were just really upset with how this honestly took place. And I feel like I don't really think that's kind of warranted because a lot of people, felt like, that this was just kind of a letdown for the ending. And I feel like it really wasn't a letdown at all. I really do feel like now that Adam Copeland is back into the fold of AEW, I think we're really just going to start picking things back up again. And I feel like the Death Riders really kind of needed something like this in order to really kind of keep people invested. Because let's face it, right now, the Death Riders are kind of just doing the exact same thing over and over and over again. And you went through 3 great competitors for your World Championship. And now you kind of figure out what's going to be next for Jon Moxley. And I don't feel like, adding Adam Copeland into the mix with FTR is going to be a bad thing. Because now you have somebody in Adam Copeland who is obviously a World Championship type caliber superstar going after somebody like Jon Moxley, and it's going to be a great thing to see. So personally, I had no issues with the way the show ended. I ultimately loved that Adam Copeland is back. FTR being paired up with him is a little bit of an iffy situation with me, but you know what? I'm perfectly going to be okay with it in the end anyway, because it's going to lead to bigger and better things for, hopefully, the AEW World Championship down the line in 2025. So I'm perfectly fine with it. Let me know your thoughts about it all down in the comment section below. But yeah, that's it. That was your AEW World's End pay-per-view for the final pay-per-view of 2024 for not just AEW, but for pro wrestling. I hope you guys enjoyed my full show review for World's End. If you guys did, make sure you guys hit that like button on your way out, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and turn on the bell for all notifications. That way you guys never miss another upload right here on the YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for watching the AEW World's End full show review, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.